Turn.
The former Liberal Treasurer, Peter Costello. A little earlier in the day, I spoke to the current Treasury spokesman for the Liberals, Joe Hockey. Shadow Treasurer Joe Hockey, thanks for your time. A little more than a fortnight after the last election, in which you fought very hard for work choices, you declared work choices was dead. Do you stand by those comments?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Peter Costello says that the government has to reconsider its proposals in relation to IR, which might have been okay in times of good growth, but it will affect jobs in a downturn. Do you agree with what Mr Costello had to say?
Well, I do. The government has to come clean on its real impact of its plans to change workplace relations in Australia. And so far, the government has skirted the issue. They've failed to lay down any economic modelling of the real jobs impact of their proposed changes to the workplace relations regime. And what we say to the government very clearly is, be upfront with the Australian people. Kieran Rudd takes this sanctimonious position of saying that he wants to be upfront with the Australian people about everything to do with the global financial crisis. Well, right here on a local issue, the Prime Minister can be upfront with the Australian people and give detailed economic modelling of the jobs impact of his changes to the workplace relation system.
So you're saying that work choices is dead, but only part of it, is that right?
Well, obviously, it is the government's plan to roll back work choices. They went to the election with that mandate. A mandate means they have the right to roll it back. They also have the right not to roll it back. That's what a mandate means. And what they should do is be upfront, fair dinkum with the Australian people and tell the Australian people what the impact is on employment of their proposed changes to workplace relations. If they've got nothing to fear, Kieran, why aren't they undertaking the economic modelling? They could do it with their cash splash before Christmas. They said it would create 75,000 jobs. Boom, we've seen no jobs created. Now they're proposing a substantial structural change in the Australian economy, and they haven't given any economic modelling on the impact of jobs. Now the government has to answer that question. They have to answer it to the Australian people.
It's the day after the GDP figures show the first negative quarter of growth in 8 years, and we're talking about workplace relations again. Is it frustrating when Peter Costello makes that sort of intervention in the debate?
Well, Peter Costello raised a lot of issues today, and I thought many of them were very good. All of them were very good in many ways, but I was particularly impressed with the reminder that he provided to the Australian people that Kieran Rudd inherited a very strong economy, and the reason why we are in many ways outperforming the rest of the world at the moment, even though we have had a contraction in the December quarter, one of the reasons why we are outperforming the rest of the world is because the fundamentals of the Australian economy remain strong. Now, you won't hear Kieran Rudd saying that. You won't hear Kieran Rudd and Wayne Swan being positive, creating a message of hope, because they have a political agenda, and that political agenda is to create fear in the Australian economy, to walk away in a year and a half time from the debate about the fact that the government could have made the impact of the global financial crisis less than what it was. And, you know, it's interesting, isn't it, Kieran? I mean, this morning we had confused messages from the government. We had the Minister for Finance out there saying that he's optimistic. We had the Treasurer saying he's pessimistic. And we had the Prime Minister saying that we're going to be hit by a massive cyclone. What is the government's message here? What message do they want to give to Australian small business when it comes to jobs?
OK, well, Mr Costello, you said he had a lot of good things to say. He also said Australia is already in recession. Is that right?
Well, certainly when you look at the non-farm GDP from the September quarter and the non-farm GDP from the December quarter, we are in a very significant economic downturn. But Kieran, look, effectively people are arguing definitions. The bottom line is, for those people who have lost their jobs or are about to lose their jobs, if we're not in recession, it certainly feels like it.
Okay, well, you have been critical of the stimulus, but the fact is retail spending is up. People might have saved more in the December quarter, but doesn't that mean that they're closer to spending sometime soon?
Well, no. Why would you spend when you have a Prime Minister saying that we're being hit by a cyclone? Why would you even leave your home to go outside when the Prime Minister says we're being hit by a cyclone? I mean, the language being used by Kevin Rudd and Wayne Swan is totally in contrast to the language that is being used by other leaders around the world who say we can get through it, we can survive this. It'll be tough, but we can survive. And when you listen to Kevin Rudd and Wayne Swan, they have a political strategy. They have no economic plan. They don't have a plan to get us out of it other than to spend and spend badly. The money that they are spending is not wisely spent. Out of the money that they've committed in these cash splashes, where are the roads? Where are the schools? Where are the hospitals that could have been built with all this amount of cash that they've pumped out into the economy? Instead, it's going into people's bank accounts, overwhelmingly into people's bank accounts, and it's not improving the productive capacity of the Australian economy.
Mr Hockey, you're having a go at the government for talking down the economy, but you've effectively said, you know, for a lot of people it feels like a recession already, and Peter Costello has said we are in a recession. I mean, in terms of talking down the economy, doesn't that qualify?
Well, Kieran, you're selectively quoting me because I believe that Australia, and I also said in the last couple of breaths, I said that Australia still has one of the strongest performing economies in the world, which it does. And we do have a positive story. Look, we've been in a similar situation before. We've had 7 out of our top 10 trading partners in recession or depression during the Asian financial crisis. We had 1 quarter of negative growth during that period, but we also, at various stages, had one of the strongest growing economies in the Western world when our trading partners were in massive distress. And overwhelmingly, you have to look at the messaging that is coming from the lips of the Prime Minister and the Treasurer. And there is no message of hope. There is no confidence that we can get through this. Simply, they are trying to inoculate the Australian people for the next election when they say, hey people, we did all that we could, but, you know, the cyclone hit and it's just bad luck. Well, yesterday...
How is it comparable to the Asian financial crisis when it was one region and they were able to trade out of it given other major economies remain strong? It's not really comparable, is it, to this current contagion?
It's Wayne Swan's comparison. And I'll tell you why. Because Wayne Swan for the last few days has been talking about 7 out of our top 10 trading partners being in recession. Well, during the Asian financial crisis, 7 out of our top 10 trading partners were in recession. So if you look at the comparisons from a trade perspective, they are not dissimilar. However, of course there's a credit crisis globally, but the Australian banks are well capitalised. They've raised a lot of money over the last 6 months, a lot of money in the marketplace. They've had a massive infusion of cash as a direct result of the government guarantee of bank deposits. So we do not have in Australia a credit crisis anywhere of the scale of the rest of the world. But I make one interesting point here, Kieran. The Prime Minister has said that small banks should be allowed to fail. Which banks is the Prime Minister referring to? Where are they? Are there any in Australia, Australian deposit-taking institutions, that he believes should be allowed to fail? They're his words. He's got to be tested on what he really means when he uses those words. It is a very serious statement by the Prime Minister to say that you should let financial institutions fail. Of course, with Rudd Bank, he doesn't want any property companies to fail. And he's put money in place to stop commercial property companies failing, but he's prepared to see deposit-taking institutions fail. The Prime Minister needs to be tested on these issues.
All right, Joe Hockey, as always, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Kieran.